Welcome to Monday Morning, where we react to the Sunday morning news shows that we watch so that you don't have to. I'm Katie Halper.
I'm Aaron Maté. Good Monday morning, everybody. Also, if you're in the U.S., happy tax day.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to treat you to a whirlwind today of all the wonderful things you're paying for with your hard-earned tax dollars. Spoiler alert, it's global carnage.
Yeah. You may have picked up on a pattern. And that we are continuing that pattern. But of course, the way you can pay your patriotic duty, not just your taxes, but your patriotic duty, is by liking the stream. Give it a thumbs up. Yeah. I'm a little sick, by the way, so apologies for my voice.
I'm sorry to hear that. Well, nothing like the smooth sounds of the Sunday morning cable news show to cure any malady. Let's hit it with Meet the Press.
Sunday morning. Good Sunday morning. The world is waking up to a new inflection point in the war in the Middle East. Overnight, Iran mounted a wide-scale aerial attack on Israel, launching more than 300 drones and missiles in retaliation for Israel's airstrike on Iran's consulate in Syria 2 weeks ago that killed 7 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guard, including 2 top commanders.
Honestly, my standards are so low that I was kind of shocked that she acknowledged that this was a retaliatory strike and not the first strike.
Yeah, I guess it is a step forward. Although she also before that called it the war in the Middle East, which is not quite accurate. There's not really, I mean, there is war going on, but it's really more accurate to call what's happening a genocide, a massacre, because, Gaza, Hamas and Israel are not equal parties at war.
Right.
And Israel has been not only hitting Gaza, but also, launching aggression against Syria, specifically, in this case, the Iranian consulate there. But yes, she did get that part right about the consulate.
And to the extent that obviously these people are mouthpieces, I think that we're seeing an interesting thing that we'll see throughout the clips today, where the U.S. is kind of trying to do 2 things at the same time, which is fillet Israel as it always does, but also try to perhaps nudge it away from retaliating against Iran. So that's why they don't want to. Sorry,
filleted nudge. It's a classic tactic. Filleted nudge. Yes.
Yeah, filleted nudge. It's the old F and N. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time Iran has directly attacked Israel from its own territory. The Israeli military with this forceful response.
Iran has launched a direct attack from Iranian soil towards the state of Israel. This is a severe and dangerous escalation.
Now, according to Israeli Defense Forces, 99% of the missiles and drones were intercepted by Israeli and U.S. forces. A few fell inside Israeli territory. The strikes caused minor damage to one Israeli military base in southern Israel and severely injured a young child. Urgent efforts at diplomacy are expected to intensify. President Biden says he will convene a meeting of the group of 7.
Ooh, urgent efforts at diplomacy will intensify. Can't wait to see how that goes.
Yeah. I mean, they've been so intense and effective already.
So intense.
So intense.
Leaders today. On Saturday, he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and reaffirmed America's ironclad commitment to the security of Israel. A senior administration official tells NBC News he also urged Netanyahu not to retaliate, but, quote, take the win. You've hit the win. For its part, Israel's defense minister.
What does that even, what does that mean? You've hit the win.
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. And this is what I was saying earlier with the fillet and nudge, but they're filleting Israel, but also trying to nudge it away from, I think, escalating, which is not an easy thing to do when you're dealing with a psychopathic entity like Israel.
It would maybe make sense if Israel was playing the lottery and they got the right number, like you've hit the winning number.
Oh, yeah.
But even there, you would see you've hit the win.
Right.
But anyway, that's Joe Biden for you.
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense. Even the quotes that he leaks out to the media, which obviously they did that. He's like, make sure you tell him I said hit the win. You hit the win. They'll like it. The kids will like it.
Minister says its confrontation with Iran is not over yet, and already Republican rhetoric is ratcheting up.
Israel's response, and there should be a response, should not be proportionate. It should be far stronger because when deterrence fails, to reestablish it, you have to teach the adversary that any gain they may hope to get by any future attack will be more than outweighed by the damage that will be caused.
Well, to be fair, John, you're kind of giving an unnecessary lecture, given that that is Israel's entire approach to warfare. They even have a name for it, right? The Dahiyya doctrine.
Yeah, well, that's the doctrine where you just slaughter a bunch of civilians
Right.
just to teach everyone a lesson.
Yeah.
Named after an Israeli attack on Lebanon.
Right. So they already do. They've mastered the disproportionate response. If I were the Israeli government, I'd be very offended by John Bolton. As if we don't already do that, sir. How dare you? Yeah. And also, it's worth remembering that there was no condemnation of what Israel did to the Iranian embassy in Syria.
Yeah, in fact, the U.S., Britain, and France blocked a resolution at the UN to condemn it. And Iran said that had the UN Security Council condemned Israel for attacking its consulate, killing 7 people, then they might not have felt obligated to launch a retaliation.
Right.
That's what they say, at least. But yes, no, that's the rules-based international order. The U.S. and its clients, like Israel, can do what they want.
Yeah.
Everyone else has to sit there and take it.
Right.
Yeah.
Commit a war crime, target an embassy. Yeah, I mean, and Iran is actually, they're citing self-defense, right? They're appealing to the UN in their retaliatory strike.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And even Israel is trying to use the language of war crimes, which is hilarious, and international law. Because I think they don't want, they feel like they should have the monopoly on violating international law. Yeah.
100% they do. And someone who agrees with them, I think, is Useful Idiot's fan favorite, John Kirby.
Oh, yeah.
Me now is National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. John, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thanks, Kristen. Good to be with you.
Thank you so much for being here. So Iran says this attack is over. Israel's defense minister says the confrontation is not. What is the United States assessment of where things stand this morning? Is this over?
Well, where things stand this morning is just an incredible military achievement by Israel and, quite frankly, the United States and other partners that helped Israel defend itself against more than 300 drones and missiles. I mean, it's just an extraordinary example of military superiority that Israel demonstrated to the whole world last night.
See, I don't have the military expertise to really evaluate this, but the counter argument to this, I think, is that, first of all, Iran launched all these drones initially as a distraction to activate Israeli air defenses so that their actual payload could get through, which are these hypersonic missiles, which did get through and hit an Israeli military base. And only 7 of those, I think, were launched by Iran, or a small number like that, which means that in a different circumstance, if Iran had launched a lot more hypersonic missiles would have gotten through. If these 7 could, then certainly more could as well. So this reads to me like a demonstration by Iran of what it could do and how Israel couldn't stop, at least some of its missiles.
Right.
And these drones that were launched beforehand were sort of the decoys. That's my military assessment. I could be totally wrong, but I don't know if John Kirby, the problem is it's John Kirby. He's a pathological liar. Right. And so if he says it was a tremendous success by Israel, I just have to reflexively assume the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. I mean, you know what it also did do is it intervened with the nonstop bombing of Gaza, right? The IDF was otherwise engaged. So even that is a victory in itself.
They stopped slaughtering civilians around the clock. They scaled it back. Yeah. I saw a tweet from somebody in Gaza saying that for the first time, the missiles aren't raining down on us.
Right.
Okay, back to John Kirby.
And I think Israel also demonstrated that it has friends, that it's not standing alone.
Well, that's important. It's really important when you're in the midst of a mass murder campaign and that triggers a retaliation by one of the governments who you've attacked in the process of defending
Right.
your mass murder campaign to show that you have friends.
Yeah.
And it's good that we're spending billions of dollars on all these, missile defense systems that we're giving Israel, and all the money that's being spent on deploying U.S. forces to the region, just to show that Israel has friends.
Right. Because I
That's
was
important.
really unsure about that.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I was really unsure because I've never heard the United States point to like a friendship with Israel or a special relationship with Israel or anything. If only they did that. If only they sometimes said every now and again that we have a special relationship, that we stand by them, unwavering.
Was the Golden Girls theme song written about the U.S. and Israel relationship?
Unclear. May have
That's my
been.
question. That's my
Thank you for
question.
being a friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a
You're a
lesson in friendship
friend
for
and
us all.
a confidant.
Yeah.
And if we had World War III and invited everyone to, yeah, I like it.
That it's not isolated on the world stage. Now, whether and how the Israelis will respond, that's going to be up to them. We understand that and respect that. But the president's been very clear. We don't seek a war with Iran. We're not looking for escalation here. We will continue to help Israel defend itself.
We're not looking for escalation, but we're
Right.
going to do everything we can to ensure that it happens. So, but we're not looking for it. That's the key
Right.
distinction that John Kirby wants us to make. Yes,
Right.
we're doing everything we can for escalation, but we're not looking for it. We don't want it. So, for example, we're going to keep arming Israel to the teeth as it slaughters civilians in Gaza. We're not going to rebuke it when it bombs a consulate in a foreign country and kills 7 people. By the way, I don't think Iran's strike even killed anybody. Its retaliation
didn't.
even killed anybody, which is pretty standard.
didn't.
Like, Israel can kill whoever it wants.
Right.
Iran calibrated its response. I
Right.
think it looks like so that it didn't kill anybody, because certainly Israel had advance warning to prepare for this.
Yes.
Like when Iran's drones were launched, already people were like, all right, they're going to hit Israel in like 2 hours. So,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, they weren't trying to kill people. They were just trying to show a little bit that they were willing to retaliate against Israel's war crimes. But there was a tweet that went kind of viral. Oh, here it is. There was a tweet that went kind of viral. Wilson, I'm gonna send it to you. We can show it during the next clip, but I think it's worth showing because it kind of captures Israel's frame of mind in terms of not understanding that there are times when people will strike military targets and not civilians, because for them war just doesn't include but requires and revolves around civilian death.
You, as we sit here right now, aware of any threats to U.S. troops in the region?
We are staying vigilant to exactly that potential threat, but we have not seen any attacks on U.S. troops or personnel in the region or our facilities, and nothing to report to this morning, but we're going to obviously watch that very, very closely.
We're staying vigilant as to the potential threats to U.S. troops while we're putting them in harm's way, because that's been the policy. Recall that before October 7th, there was basically a truce between Iranian-backed forces in the region and U.S. troops that are occupying Iraq and Syria. Syria completely against the will of local government, which doesn't want the U.S. there. But the U.S. is there to steal Syria's oil and wheat, to punish Syria because Syria didn't get overthrown in the regime change war there. That's basically why the U.S. is there. And that led to the killing of 3 U.S. troops when they were hit by a drone attack at that air base on the Jordan-Syria border. So the Biden administration policy, while providing unfettered support to Israel's mass murder campaign, has been to keep its U.S. forces there like sitting ducks.
Right.
And all John Kirby can say is we're monitoring the situation to see if more of our people get killed.
Very vigilant. They're going to make sure to not do anything about it if Israel does it. Remember, if you harm an American, we will respond unless Israel does it.
Exactly. Okay, let's go to the next clip of John Kirby. He is going to be asked another question by Kirsten Welker.
But before we do that, can we just show this one tweet that I mentioned? This is like Israel in a nutshell, I feel like. So someone named Olia writes, breaking, Israel before and after the Iranian bombing. Wilson, can you just show that? And it's a beautiful coastline, right? Beach, an Israeli beach. And obviously nothing has happened to it, because Iran isn't trying to kill civilian infrastructure or civilians. Okay, and then scroll up. And then Mohammed Margbar America writes, Israelis can't comprehend that other countries actually bomb military targets and not civilians.
It's so
There you
true.
have it. Yeah.
It's so true. Yeah. Like if that were Gaza, every civilian building there, hospitals, schools, mosques would be
Right.
destroyed.
Right. And so Israel thinks it's taunting Iran for not killing enough civilians.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, more John Kirby.
President Biden said this week that Prime Minister Netanyahu's actions in Gaza are a, quote, mistake. Do you trust his judgment in deciding how to respond to these attacks?
He's the prime minister of Israel. He's the elected leader of their government. We're going to continue to work with him, advise him, provide counsel and perspective, as well as make clear he knows, and I think he does certainly from last night, that the United States will continue to help them defend themselves.
Right.
I mean, there is still a very dire humanitarian situation in Gaza. And after the last call, not last night, but the one before that with the prime minister assured the president that he would work to meet some of the president's requests with respect to increasing the aid, opening up additional crossings, getting more trucks in. And you know what, Kristen, in the last few days, that has happened. Something on the order of 2,000 trucks have gotten in just since the discussion with Prime Minister Netanyahu a week or so ago. Now, is it enough? No, of course not. It's got to be sustained over time. But the Israelis are making efforts to try to meet good on those commitments.
President Biden said this week that
So John Kirby's admitting there a few things. He's admitting that the moment that Biden actually used the threat of U.S. leverage with Netanyahu, that compelled Netanyahu to act and finally allow in aid trucks that he was blocking, which means he's also acknowledging that Israel was deliberately depriving Gaza of aid. And because it took just only a slight nudge from Biden to get Israel to reverse that, that means that Biden was fully complicit in that.
Right.
Because Biden knew what Israel was doing. And he's bragging about that. We're talking about more than 6 months into a genocide, and he's bragging that finally Israel allowed in a trickle of aid trucks that it was blocking, which he even then acknowledges not even enough. But we're supposed to be impressed by that.
Right. And which, of course, Israel was denying that they were doing.
Yes, and John Kirby was denying that they were doing too. He was saying, there's, and even there he says, no, there are problems. There are unspecified problems, but the unspecified problem is that Israel's still blocking aid,
right?
And still, has a whole list of things that won't allow into Gaza. For a long time, it was blocking flour. Finally, for the first time recently, they've allowed some bakeries to reopen, which is supposed to be some sort of generous act to let bakeries that make bread operate for the first time in months.
Right. It's magical because Israel managed to open crossings it claimed it had never closed.
There you go. Exactly. And again, all this passes without any kind of comment by news anchors. They just assume this is normal for a genocidal government to block aid, prevent bakeries from operating, and then finally 6 months in, when a little bit relents, they treat this as if it's some sort of positive achievement when it never should have happened in the first place. It's a war crime to deliberately starve people.
Right. Disgusting.
Okay, Michael McCall,
friend of show. We love him.
He's the Republican chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he's going to offer a searing critique of the Biden administration from the Republican side, which is simply that Biden is insufficiently pro-genocide.
Right.
How concerned are you about the security threats to Americans abroad? And is the U.S. prepared to do an evacuation if needed?
We're always concerned. We don't want escalation in the region. That would be a threat to our troops and our embassies. As I understand, talking to the State Department, the embassy is in good shape right now in Israel. Yeah, and I think the fact of the matter is, as Mr. Kirby mentioned, is 99% of these rockets and drones were shot down.
Right.
Pretty impressive display of force, showing of force in collaboration with the United States, Jordan, and other allies. And it also showed us Iran's not 10 feet tall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Iran is not 10 feet tall. That is a real important takeaway. I mean, it only took 3 countries to fend off these attacks, including the most powerful military. So
Yeah, I think what he means by Iran is not 10 feet tall is that Iran, unlike Israel and the U.S., showed some restraint. They gave advance warning of this attack. Israel knew it was coming. They had plenty of time to prepare for it, and they didn't kill anybody. They didn't kill any civilians, unlike Israel and the U.S. So I guess in Michael McCall's eyes, that means Iran is not 10 feet tall.
it's short. It's a short king.
Yeah. Okay. Let's turn to another Republican, Senator John Kennedy.
This is a great clip.
He's got a lot to offer here.
So much to offer. The senator from Louisiana.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, joining us now, Republican Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana. Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday. Okay.
I love that greeting, by the way.
Yeah.
Senator, welcome to Fox News Sunday. He just wants to get down to business.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants to get down to business.
No small talk.
Yeah, exactly. No small talk for John. Okay. Let's hear what he's got to say. This is some good stuff.
So your response to the calls by, listen, there are Democrats and Republicans, and you heard Admiral Kirby say that they want that Senate package to get done. The Speaker hasn't moved it in the House. What's your message to both of these bicameral institutions today?
Well, I think my position is pretty clear. I love Israel. I despise Putin. I despise the Communist Party of China. And I despise the Ayatollah in Iran. I don't want America.
First of all, I just want to acknowledge what a inspiring example of mental health John Kennedy is providing here. Because what's he doing? He's sharing his resentments.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, which if you don't share your resentments, if you let them fester inside of you, they're gonna burn you alive. So John Kennedy is a model for all of us, and just he's asked about a regional flare-up of bombings and strikes, and he's talking about his resentments.
Yeah, his
which
feelings.
happens to be the Ayatollah, Russia, and the Communist Party of China for some reason.
He's talking about his love and hate. He's really sharing.
Yeah,
a lot of men are afraid to share their feelings.
They're so afraid. He's a model.
He's a model. Yeah.
If he wasn't so busy being a really important senator, he could be a male influencer.
He could be, yeah, and a public speaker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
America to be the world's policeman, but I don't want those guys to be the world's policeman either. And with those guys, if you turn the other cheek, you just get it in the neck.
You get it in the neck.
Yeah.
I do not want to get it in the neck personally.
Me neither.
I do not want to get it in the neck. John Kennedy doesn't want to get it in the neck, or does he? I don't know. Let's hear more.
More sheep is not going to solve the wolf problem.
That's okay. Now he's throwing in some, some farming advice.
Zoological, farming advice. Yeah.
So for anyone out there who's running a ranch, or a large property, if you have a wolf problem, I'm sorry, more sheep is not going to solve it for you.
Right.
I don't really get the connection to Israel, Palestine, Iran, but hey, this is why he's a senator and a male influencer.
But if and an animal influencer. But if a sheep turns the other cheek, that sheep is going to get in the neck from a wolf. Yeah.
I don't know, but I expect the Speaker of the House probably next week to put an Israel support bill on the floor of the House. I think it'll be followed by a bill to support Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific. And number three, I think he will put a bill to support Ukraine. Now, I think his bill is going to make the money alone, LOAN. I think it will require Ukraine to pay it back. I think we will seize some Russian assets to pay for it. I think the bill will be limited to military aid, not humanitarian aid. And
don't worry, guys, no humanitarian aid, just military.
That's the Republican opposition when it comes to Ukraine proxy war funding. Even though the majority of their voters don't support it, their way of opposing Biden on this is to say, okay, fine, we'll give you the money, but just if it's for weapons, nothing for humanitarian purposes in Ukraine.
think there will be some strong encouragement to make Europe, which is vastly more wealthy than Russia, to do a better job of putting its money where its mouth is. And I think the bill will pass. It'll come back to the Senate, and unfortunately, I predict that if it comes back to the Senate, the big issue on those bills will not be Ukraine. The big issue will be Israel, because it is clear that President Biden is being influenced by the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party.
Well, yep. Very clear. Thank you for laying it out. Thank you for saying what we've all been wanting to say.
The notorious Hamas wing of the Democratic Party, by which he means the handful of people who, after 6 months, are finally calling it a genocide. Like Elizabeth Warren, for example, who's voted for every single measure so far to fund Israel. Recently, she finally came out and said, "You know what? Actually, this is probably a genocide."
Right.
Oops.
Oops, I probably shouldn't have voted to fund it.
Yeah, and then of course there was that small number of people in the House on the Democratic side who called for a ceasefire from the start, but that was like a tiny number of people. By the way, all of them were people of color. They couldn't find a single white person in the House to call for a ceasefire up until relatively recently.
Yeah.
So that's what John Kennedy means by the Hamas wing of the Democratic Party.
But also, as Karine Jean-Pierre stated so forcefully, that calls for a ceasefire were repugnant.
That is correct. Yes. While she was, of course, looking down at her paper, because she can't look up as she says these words.
Yeah.
Okay, don't worry, everyone. There's a lot more from Senator Kennedy.
To that point, you've got Senator Sanders there, one of your colleagues, who says in a piece in the Boston Globe this week, he said, not another nickel to Netanyahu. He says, does America want to be on the side of history of standing with people who are child killers and creating starvation? I mean, those are his words. He seems determined to block anything going to Israel.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. And in the past,
I like the way that's what he did at the beginning. Remember, when she greeted him, that's his like. I'm about to say something really serious. Okay.
60 days, we have seen President Biden go wobbly in his support of Israel. And today, the White House has already leaked to the press early this morning that they're not going to participate in an Israeli response to what Iran just did. Let me say it again. More sheep is not going to solve the wolf problem. My advice to the president today, for what it's worth, Mr. President, don't. Stop it. Support Israel. With respect, go to Amazon and buy a spine online.
Ooh, that's a good one.
He nailed him.
Buy a spine online. Yeah.
He nailed him.
Yeah. When do you think he came up with that? You think that was an aide who came up with that, or did he come up with that?
It could have been on the spot. I mean, again, we're talking about a really a deep mind with a multitude of qualities. He's a male influencer. He's sensitive. He's sharing his anger, his
animal
influencer. So who knows whether he did invent that rhyme on the spot? It's
and
impressive.
Has a rapper's wit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Peace through weakness never works. Not with these hard men.
What about the issue?
Obvious follow-up there for the Fox News anchor. How hard are these men, sir?
Right.
How hard are they? Yeah. Like, tell us more about these hard men.
Well, he's showing us what a ripe man, or whatever. I don't want to say soft, but what he's a not hard man, because he's so open about his feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah. If those hard men were more like him, we wouldn't have to have war.
It's so true. He's the picture of sensitivity.
Yeah.
Unlike these hard men in these bad guy countries.
Yeah.
Of Rafah and the fact that there are more than 1 million civilians. Many of them are refugees from other areas within Israel. They were told to evacuate there. They're there now. We know that Hamas uses them as human shields, but the fact is they're there. You know, the U.S. is weighing in on.
Again, there's 1 million people displaced in Rafah at Israel's orders, and yet it's Israel using them. Sorry, it's Hamas using them as human shields. That's the assumption from the anchor here.
Yeah, which is a talking point that never ever gets questioned.
Yeah.
on this. We are cautioning them. We are also indicating we're not going to be supportive of a mission there. Israel says getting to Hamas is, extinguishing an existential threat for them. But what are we to do about the civilian population caught in the middle of this thing?
Move them into the Sinai Peninsula. Now, that would require the consent of Egypt. We send billions of dollars a year in aid to Egypt. Egypt gets billions of dollars of free money from the International Monetary Fund that America controls. We need to sit down.
Well, that was refreshing.
I know.
He just admitted that the U.S. controls the International Monetary Fund, which is basically a tool of U.S. imperialism around the world. It locks countries into austerity measures that are deeply unpopular and forces them to become even more subservient to the local elite and the U.S.-run financial system. So that's refreshing from John Kennedy to have the candor to admit that we control the IMF.
Right.
It's supposed to be a multilateral global institution serving everybody, but he's saying we control it. So
Right.
yeah,
It's also refreshing. Again, he's such an open man. It's also refreshing to hear him just own ethnic cleansing and wanting to move them into the Sinai.
Exactly.
If he weren't as in touch with his feelings, he wouldn't say that.
And say we're moving the refugees into Sinai, and we're going to do to Hamas what we did to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Egypt will not.
Well, that wouldn't make sense for Israel to say we're going to do to Hamas what we did to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because when it comes to ISIS and Al-Qaeda, Israel helped them in Syria. Israel armed the sectarian insurgents that were fighting the Syrian government, and that included ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That was a part of that coalition fighting Syria that Israel armed. And in fact, they were such allies that when ISIS accidentally fired into Israel, ISIS apologized to Israel.
I know. Now that's friendship.
That is.
Remember,
friendship.
Kirby was bragging about how Israel has friends. The United States, England, ISIS.
Yeah.
I like it, but I think Egypt will understand why we're insisting on them doing that. Now, if the refugees don't want to move, that is their choice. But there is a simple answer to this if we just show a little bit of fortitude.
Well, we know Egypt.
So if the refugees don't want to be ethnically cleansed again, that's their choice. But basically, he's saying tough luck, then it's okay to slaughter them. I think that's the implication of what he's saying.
Yeah, they had a chance to do something else. And if they don't do it, sucks for them.
Well, it doesn't suck for us that we were treated to the wisdom of Senator John Kennedy. Wow, what a tour de force. That was really, really something. Let's move on to another Senate genius. His name is Marco Rubio.
Oh, yeah.
And he will share his thoughts with Useful Idiot's fan favorite, Jake Tapper.
Senator from Florida, Marco Rubio. He's the vice chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Rubio, thanks so much for joining us. You are the vice chair of Senate Intelligence. What are you hearing about this attack, and what is your assessment of Iran's goal here?
Well, Iran's goal it has always been the same, and that is to make Israel an unlivable place. Iran does not believe that it can. Iran knows it cannot beat Israel militarily, but what it does aspire to do is make Israel an impossible place to live and a place no one wants to visit. I hear a lot.
How does it do that exactly?
Is it launching a crippling embargo that denies Israel the right to, import chocolate and potato chips, which is what Israel does to Gaza, and actually what the U.S. tries to do to Iran by imposing crippling sanctions, although obviously with much less success than Israel has in Gaza. But it sounds like he's projecting, which is a theme for these people.
Right.
A lot of talk right now about how this was a performative attack and how none of them got through, and this is all great. It's good that those strikes did not get through and harm anybody. But what do you think the tourism numbers are today in Israel and in the next couple of weeks? What do we think the business numbers are going to look like? All of this is harmful.
Those are actually crimes against humanity. It is touristic genocide that Iran is committing.
Yes. How about the tourism numbers in Gaza or the West
Yeah.
Bank right now? How are they doing?
Probably not doing so well. Yeah.
You know, it's kind of hard to have tourism. First of all, even before the genocide,
Right.
you couldn't really have tourism in Gaza because it was under blockade. It was under
Right.
siege. People couldn't get out. It was very hard to get in. It's very, very hard to get in. Even, you know, under the so-called ceasefire, like under the normal times
Right.
of pre-October 7th. Anyway, but this reflects just the prevailing attitude in the U.S. government, whether you're Democrat or Republican, with some exceptions at the margins. That just Palestinians are not equal human beings. So
Right.
all the things we take for granted, tourism, daily life, that just doesn't apply to them. They're not allowed to have all those things because it's normal to put them under blockade and now genocide.
Yeah, but thank you, Marco, for reminding us of the real victims of this war. The tourism industry of Israel.
That is the goal of Iran ultimately, and that's why they want us out of Iraq. That's why they want us out of Syria. That's why they want to overthrow the king in Jordan, and that's why they want to continue to surround Israel from Gaza, from Lebanon. They aspire one day from Jordan, from Syria, from Iraq, have all these proxies that are able, and then from Iran now, able to attack Israel and make it an unlivable place so that the Jewish state will collapse from within economically and socially. That,
Israel still controls the Syrian Golan Heights, which it stole in 1967 and has refused to give back. So has that helped make Syria suffer and denied Syria the tourism, for example, which Marco Rubio is he's really into tourism.
Right.
So Syria can't even visit its own territory because Israel has stolen it. Then there was the Dirty War, one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive covert war in history. Billions of dollars managed by the CIA into sectarian insurgents, fighting to overthrow the Syrian government. And now, in Syria, for example, which he mentions, Iran and its allies want U.S. troops out because they're occupiers and they're not welcome there. And we're supposed to not like military occupations. I thought that was the whole point of arming Ukraine against Russia. Because in Syria, the U.S. is stealing Syria's oil and wheat. And so that's why Syria doesn't want the U.S. there, and they have Iran's help in that.
Yeah. But Aaron, I mean, you're just distracted. I don't know why you had to mention all those things, because every time you do that, you're distracting people from the tourism hit.
Oh, that's true. My bad.
Is their aspiration. That is why many of those drones had lights on, so you could see them coming in, and the terror aspect of that. And that's what we need to understand here, is that at the core of all of this is not simply to respond to the death of an IRGC killer, but it is also to continue to move forward on this plan to make Israel an unlivable place.
By the way,
see how Israel
those evil Iranians put lights on their drones.
Yeah.
How dare they?
Yeah, how dare they? Yeah.
The terror. Yes.
Also, I like the way that they have the alarms going on to really remind us of the terror.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So Iran is evil because they put lights on its drones, whereas we give Israel 2,000-pound bombs that like relentlessly destroy neighborhoods in Gaza, hospitals, everything. But it's only Iran because they put lights on their drones. They're the ones inflicting terror.
Yeah.
In an attack, it didn't even kill anybody.
Right. But it was psychological warfare, Aaron.
I mean, what's the term here? Snowflake?
Yeah.
Geez. Okay. Let's turn to another chicken hawk. Actually, no, he's not a chicken hawk. He actually serves.
He's a hawk. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
He's a hawk.
Yeah.
Retired
Former
General
CENTCOM chief, retired General Frank McKenzie.
And who he is the guy who was in the operation, the U.S. military operation ordered by Donald Trump that killed Qasem Soleimani. That played a major role in triggering all of this, because Qasem Soleimani was
a very handsome man,
as Kay likes to point out every time he's mentioned. He was a top Iranian general, leader of the IRGC. And when he was in Iraq, actually on a peace mission to broker a truce between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the Trump administration decided to kill him. And claimed that they were acting on intelligence, that he was plotting attacks on U.S. forces, which was a lie. And Frank McKenzie,
it was really over a meme. It was really over a meme war, a Twitter meme war. Yeah.
And so Frank McKenzie was a part of that operation, and now he gets to pretend to be a serious expert about Iran.
If Israel were to respond, would you have suggested targets? What would you expect?
That's kind of a weird question. Any suggestions for Israel on how to respond? Anything
Yes.
that you want them to hit?
Yes, I'm a news anchor, but I also like to wear the hat of Israeli military strategist.
Yeah,
So can we plan some targets right now on national TV?
Let's spitball. Yeah.
Any
Hopefully they're
bakeries?
watching.
Any bakeries do you know of in Iran that we can hit like Israel does in Gaza
Right,
or
yeah,
hospitals?
yeah. Right, hospitals, yeah.
Well, the Israelis have a lot to choose from, both inside Iran and outside Iran. My only strategic advice would be, you want to be narrow. You want to make sure that it has a definable beginning and a definable end, and the Iranians know when it's over. But the fact of the matter is, Israel can name its price right now, and that's a very—
Oh my God, name its price. Come on. The anti-Semitic undertones there. I'm waiting for the ADL to cancel him. Ask for it. What is he going to say? Ask for its pound of flesh next? Unbelievable.
heady position to be in, but it's also a position that calls for exercise of strategic restraint and a view to the long term. And Israel has an opportunity here, I think, to demonstrate that and to seize the diplomatic initiative, really, in an arena where they struggled to do it over the past few months.
Okay, all right, wow. He's even less hawkish than Margaret Brennan there. She's saying, what targets can Israel hit? He's saying, let's actually maybe have some diplomacy.
Yeah, I know. Narrow and diplomacy. What's going on there? Yeah. By the way, I usually ignore the hater comments, but I want to call this guy in and set about. Alan Brown, world citizen, writes, Jewish girl still self-hating and taking the wrong side of this conflict. Norman Finkelstein's secret Dieter, I think he means daughter. Also probably meant Difer, right? Yeah. Difer. Also, you want the apostrophe before the S for Finkelstein, but anyway. But why isn't Aaron his secret soon? Why are you excluding Aaron?
Yeah, this is erasure. This is erasure.
Yeah, this is erasure. You have a Jewish boy still self-hating and taking the wrong side of the conflict. Anyway, all right, now I'll block Alan.
Alan Brown, if you want to be a responsible world citizen, you have to treat all of us as equal.
Exactly, yeah.
So I also would like to be one of Norman Finkelstein's secret progeny. Yeah.
Pragnig, or however he'd spell it. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Where are we at likes, by the way? Wilson, let's see.
All right. Well, in the meantime, let's go to.
I see 1.3K.
1.3K.
Which is about a third, honestly.
That's kind of pathetic. Let's get it up to 1.5, guys. Anyone here who hasn't liked, unless you're Richard whatever world citizen, there's no excuse. I respect his not liking this. But where are we at now? I really would rather not have to take time away from this, but this is how you are a useful citizen.
I think all the Dafers and the Tsuns of Norman Finkelstein are here as well, because we're at 1.5K. Everybody's showing up.
Thank you. Thank you for showing up. All right. Now we can get back to the clips.
Okay. Here's another gem from one of Israel's most stalwart supporters.
Oh, God. So weird. Yeah.
Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman.
Oh, so bizarre.
To discuss Democratic Senator John Fetterman from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Senator, what is your reaction to Iran's attack?
Jake Tapper is also from Pennsylvania, and he's so proud of the fact that John Fetterman is a senator, because Fetterman has emerged as one of the most unhinged supporters of Israel.
Yeah.
And as is Jake Tapper. So this is a real moment of pride for him. So from the great Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
It is the state of brotherly love, or Philadelphia is the city of brotherly love. So yeah.
Well, there's a lot between these two right here.
Exactly.
They both love genocide.
On Israel, and how worried are you that this is the beginning of an open war between the two countries?
Well, a couple of things, actually. I think it really demonstrates how it's astonishing that we are not standing firmly with Israel, and there should never be any kinds of conditions on all of that. When a nation can launch hundreds of drones towards Israel, and I'm not going to be talking about conditions ever. And second, I think that also was Iran.
So wait, the fact that there's a country that can launch drones means your support for Israel is unconditional. I don't really understand the calculus in that. But Israel must be allowed to commit genocide because Iran can launch drones. Okay. Interesting.
Had to have some fireworks after Israel smoked that Iranian general. And I'm here for that. And I think it's just a matter of theater, part of it as well, too. And
okay, wait, I thought that Iran was a big threat and scary, but now you're saying this was just theater.
So for anyone who is not familiar with who this guy is, he's actually a U.S. senator. He's not a young child. And he literally just said on cable TV, as he sits there in like in a ill-fitting hoodie,
yeah,
he said, when Israel smoked that Iranian general, and I'm here for that. And he gave the thumbs up. Okay. But he's not 12. He's actually a grown adult who happens to serve in the Senate.
Yeah. In case you were confused, which would be understandable. Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, I haven't even heard someone use that term when someone smoked someone, but
yeah,
you know, it sounds like it sounds like he's like, you know, it sounds like he's like a kid in like the lunchroom talking about like WrestleMania, which has happened.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I don't know who the wrestlers are now. When The Rock smoked John Cena or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah.
Thumbs up. Yeah.
I was there. I'm here for that.
Yeah. I'm here for that. I'm here for that.
finally, it demonstrates how unstable things are and why we need to lean in and stand with Israel.
How do you think Israel?
That's a little bit like tricky. Lean in and stand with them. You got to make sure you keep your balance. That's probably why Biden's wobbly, because he's leaning in and standing with Israel. That's why Biden's wobbly, as Kennedy called him.
Should respond. Should Israel strike within Iranian territory, or are you concerned that that might only escalate matters further?
Again, more military advice.
Yes, from John Fetterman. Yes, let's hear what he has to say.
Well, I'm not going to suggest what Israel.
Oh my God! Sorry, the alarms are so ridiculous.
Oh yeah, they love playing these alarms. So you know, it's like they did the same thing when Joe Biden visited Kyiv on that daring mission during the Ukraine proxy war, which the corporate media failed to tell us they had coordinated with Russia. Like they told Russia Joe Biden's coming, so you know, don't bomb him then.
Yeah.
And then everyone pretended as if this was this huge, daring, brave mission. And just for effect, as him and Zelensky did a photo op, they ran some air sirens exactly at that moment. Yeah. And they're doing the same thing here. Like they're playing sounds of air sirens from Israel to dramatize the situation. Would they do that for Gaza, which is actually under serious bombardment with U.S.-made weapons? Of course not.
Yeah.
I'm not going to suggest what Israel should or shouldn't do on that. But I also do think that Iran is pleased with, they have enough of money on the table with all of its proxies all around in the region as well, too. And Iran certainly can't take on Israel, and certainly not us. So I think they would just like to keep things as they go. And then after they made a point back, I think they could go pretty quiet and go back to just using their proxies.
A senior administration official tells...
Did he say they're proxies? He may have.
CNN
it's tough to get through a John Fetterman clip.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Hold on.
Their proxies.
A senior administration official tells CNN that President Biden.
Proxies is a great term. It's the Ukraine proxies war.
Yeah. It's good praxises to say proxies. Yeah.
Okay, should we move on from John Fetterman? It's kind of torturous to listen to.
It is torturous, yeah. It's kind of punching down. Sure.
Punching down. Yeah. Even though he is a sitting U.S. senator.
Right. Not
raking in millions from AIPAC, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's so weird because he's neither Jewish nor part of the Christian right. And yet his Zionism is it's so fanatical. You would expect him to be one of those two things. Like someone who has been raised as a Zionist or someone who believes in the end times.
Well, he does have a bank account. And
right. Yeah.
Groups like AIPAC pour a lot of money into candidates like him. It's true. I think that's...
How many hoodies do you think they've sent him?
That's a lot of hoodies. It's a lot of hoodies. Okay, let's turn to another John. John Bolton of Iraq war fame and Trump administration fame. Of course, taken seriously as a analyst on CNN.
Yeah.
So I think Israel has a wide range of potential targets. You start by flattening Iran.
The sirens are still going in the background.
I know. Yeah.
On CNN,
of course.
it's like the sirens are just on loop constantly.
It's so annoying. It actually gets in the way. They should lower them at least so we can hear what he's saying.
Remember that video? It was from one of the conventions, I think the Democratic convention, where you could like at the end of it, the nominee was speaking and like you could hear from the control room. He was saying, "We need more balloons. We need more balloons."
Oh, yeah.
Right? If you had this on CNN, they'd be saying, "We need more sirens. We need more sirens." Constantly.
Yeah.
Iran's air defense capabilities. Next, you might go after headquarters of the regular military and the Revolutionary Guard. You could consider going after their oil infrastructure, the oil fields, the distribution pipelines, the export port facilities.
Again, the corporate media, your place for military advice for Israel.
And most importantly, I think Israel should be looking at this as an opportunity to destroy Iran's nuclear weapons program, which is the existential threat that Israel faces. I don't know what.
One problem here, John Bolton, they don't have a nuclear weapons program. They have a nuclear program. They have a nuclear program which has accelerated because John Bolton's administration, the Trump administration, pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal.
Right.
So if they wanted to make a nuclear weapon, now they are closer to doing that. But they don't actually have an active nuclear weapons program. That's just a lie you can say on corporate TV with no pushback because it serves a propaganda narrative. But they don't have a nuclear weapons program. And of course, Jake Tapper will not correct them because, just silly facts like that don't matter.
Right.
What they'll do, I can't predict it, but I will tell you this. If Joe Biden, as some press reports have it, is urging the Israelis not to retaliate at all, he is an embarrassment to the United States. This is an American interest to make sure that Iran, which is the principal threat to international peace and security in the region, is at a minimum put in its place.
Put in its place.
The U.S. is occupying Syria belligerently. Syria doesn't want the U.S. there. It's arming Israel to the teeth as it commits mass murder. It's in Iraq, even though, Iraq has at times asked the U.S. to leave. And Bolton's administration, when he was serving under Trump, they responded by threatening to seize Iraq's foreign reserves, which are held in a bank in New York. And that got Iraq to back down. And Bolton wants us to think that Iran is the principal threat to security in the region. And what he really means by that is Iran is the top country in the region that can deter U.S.-Israeli hegemony. Right. And that's why he's obsessed with destroying Iran. That's why they launched the regime change war in Syria, or a major reason was to actually draw in Iran and Hezbollah because they want to bleed anybody who can curb U.S.-Israeli power. And that's what they're obsessed with. And you're seeing it here. He wants to bomb Iran after Iran retaliates for an Israeli bombing that, unlike Iran, actually killed people.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Disgusting guy. No wonder he hates the UN so much. Remember, he wants, as we pointed out recently, he wants to get rid of a couple of floors of the UN.
Mm-hmm.
He hates diplomacy. Anything that gets in the way of war is terrible. Is a threat.
All right. Well, since it's tax day, and we're just reviewing all the wonderful things that U.S. taxpayers are paying for, there's also the whole proxy war in Ukraine going on. And it looks like momentum is building for Biden to finally get that $61 billion he's been clamoring for to prolong the war, at least until the November election. Yeah. And Republicans looks like they're going to cave and give it to him after House Speaker Mike Johnson has stalled the package for a while. So one of the House's biggest hawks, Mike McCall, was on Face the Nation to discuss it.
And also, just so you know, at the beginning of this clip, you're going to see a tweet, and it's from Oksana Markarova, and it says, as Iran, who's an ambassador, right? Ukrainian ambassador. And it says, as Iran attacks Israel with drones, Russia continues to attack Ukraine with the same Iranian drones. The axis of evil, Russia, Iran, North Korea, is a threat for all democracies. We must double down and defeat Russia and Ukraine to stop/deter all of evil aggressors. Hashtag stand with Israel. Okay.
Well, you know that when someone trots out the term axis of evil, only good things follow.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Totally.
So,
Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from Mike McCall.
But the Speaker of the House doesn't seem to share, and we've talked about this before, the sense of emergency that you have. Why is there still not a date for a vote on Ukraine? I did see the statement from Steve Scalise, the whip, saying that there should be a consideration of legislation to support Israel. But what does that mean? Is that a vote on the National Security Supplemental?
Fantastic journalism here from Margaret Brennan. So
Yeah.
earlier we saw her say, hey, okay, let's go over some targets for Israel to bomb in Iran. Now she's moving on to Ukraine. She's saying, when are we getting a vote on the money?
She's very impatient.
Where's the money?
Yeah.
Where's the money?
Show me the money, as Jerry Maguire said. Yeah.
That is a speaker determination. I'll be talking to him this evening with other national security people and chairs. I talked to the ambassador, our ambassador to Ukraine as well. She said the situation is dire. You know, Kharkiv could implode any day now. That's 2 million people. And the power grid is under threat right now. If the power grid goes out in Ukraine altogether, we don't have time on our side here, Margaret. We have to get this done. I would implore.
Do you know why the power grid is under threat in Ukraine right now? The Washington Post actually just reported it. There's an article in today's Washington Post saying that the Biden administration has been urging Ukraine to stop hitting Russia's oil refineries. Now, the main reason I think is because Biden doesn't want energy prices to rise during his reelection campaign, right? But also, the article points out that in retaliation for Ukraine hitting Russia's oil refineries, Russia has been hitting Ukraine's electrical grid. And it's true they've done that before, but these recent strikes by Russia have been the most intense by Russia against Ukraine's power grid. So Russia, the Washington Post acknowledged today, has been retaliating for Ukrainian strikes on these oil refineries by hitting Ukraine's power grid. And so that's why the grid's being attacked, which Michael McCall fails to mention. Of course, right. Margaret Brennan will not bring that up because all she cares about is more money to prolong this horrible war.
What I need to educate my colleagues, they're all tied together.
Yes.
I mean, Iran is selling this stuff to Russia. Guess who's buying Iran's energy? China. And you know why?
I love these moments when they all realize it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all connected. It's all integral.
Right.
The integral approach
they're
to warmongering.
Yeah,
exactly.
They're actually intersectionalists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we lifted or waived the sanctions that we had, this administration, on the drones and the missiles and on the energy. This is giving them $100 billion in cash to fund their terror operations. And that's why we're seeing this.
Okay, but you still...
It's all connected. So if we are not strangling Iran and choking its economy, then somehow we're going to lose the proxy war in Ukraine and Taiwan, as Lindsey Graham likes to say. By the way, I seriously doubt the Biden administration waived sanctions on Iranian missiles. I'm going to call BS on that one. That doesn't fly. All Biden did, by the way, Biden did not return to the Iran nuclear deal. As he had said he would.
He promised,
All he did was he unfroze some of the money that the U.S. was stealing from Iran. And Republicans, for them, that's like, appeasing Iran by not stealing some of their money.
Unforgivable.
Don't have a commitment from the Republican Speaker of the House to vote on what you say is a Republican priority. That has to drive you mad here. Do you expect to get an answer when you talk to the Speaker tonight?
I'll tell you who it's driving mad. It's driving mad Margaret Brennan.
Exactly, yeah.
She is not happy that we don't have that $61 billion to prolong this
well,
war.
She's almost a Canadian. She's Kennedy-like in her openness about her feelings. And she's encouraging. Yeah, he is an influencer, right?
He really
You're
is.
Right. He's a mental health influencer.
Maybe she watched him before going on air and inspired her to, just let it all out. Why not?
Yeah, and she's encouraging McFaul to do that also, because she's saying it must drive you crazy, it must drive you mad. She wants him to open up.
Where's your anger? Where's your anger?
Where's your anger?
I don't see the anger. I don't feel the emotion here.
I don't feel
Where is it? Share it.
Where is it? Share it. You need to be more like Kennedy.
How do you feel that $61 billion in taxpayer money is not being spent right now on more money for the military industrial complex?
Crazy, drive you mad. Yeah. Sorry, I called him McFall. I meant McCall. McFall's another terrible hawk.
That it will come to the floor. My preference is
when
this week.
When
your preference, but still an open question.
I think she really wants him to share more about his emotions.
Hard hitting.
Yeah.
Here's some more from Margaret Brennan, because in this clip we're going to see her indignation at a very troubling development.
Polling shows that among Republicans, the most trusted source of information on Ukraine and Russia is Donald Trump. 79%, Congressman. 60% trust the Pentagon.
Less people trust the Pentagon. Where is the faith in the Pentagon? This is an outrage.
Yeah.
People do not trust or have their full faith in the premier warmongering institution in the world.
Known for its honesty and
Yes.
open accounting.
Yes.
Transparency. Yeah.
Look at that. The State Department under Tony Blinken, the 27%. That's well deserved. I mean, Tony Blinken, I mean, come on. Is there a bigger pathological liar? But for Margaret Brennan, who works in the corporate media, who launders the claims of the Pentagon and the State Department, this is an outrage.
Right.
Conservative media is 56%, which is separated from actual journalists in war zones, which is 33%. The State Department, 27%. How do you fight that information war when the Republican frontrunner for the presidential nomination is helping to spread some of that disinformation?
Well, I think that's precisely why the speaker went down to Milagro to talk to him about the Ukraine package, to get him to agree that, this loan program for direct government assistance like the EU does would be acceptable. Remember the first lethal aid package that ever went to Ukraine that I signed off on, $300 million, came from the Trump administration. They don't want to see us.
That is correct, Michael McCall. And the reason that happened is because Barack Obama's predecessor didn't want to send those weapons against the advice of everybody in his administration. Joe Biden, Jake Sullivan, Victoria Nuland, Antony Blinken, they all wanted to send weapons to Ukraine. But Obama didn't want to be known as the president who, further escalated the Ukraine proxy war, which began when his government helped back a coup in 2014. Right. And when Trump came into office, he was facing claims that he was a Russian agent. And because he has no principles, he just wanted to appease the powerful people in Washington. He signed off on those weapons, and that helped bring us to where we are today. So that's another example of how Russiagate paid dividends for the military-industrial complex, which, of course, we're still paying for. But anyway, I just thought that little that poll was, and the indignation at that poll was so funny.
Yeah.
Because Margaret Brennan can't believe people don't trust the Pentagon.
Yeah. Again, she's really being Kennedyan, open with her feelings. Yeah.
All right. Well, we have time for a couple more clips.
Only one more, just because I have a doctor's appointment.
We do want to hear from the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, because, he's been, the dominant theme is that he's opposed to Ukraine aid. He's doing Russia's bidding. Right. And really, his call now is to send all the money to Ukraine, but just make sure that it's a loan. And so here he is actually saying that, contrary to popular belief, Trump and him are fully in lockstep on two things: funding the Ukraine proxy war and also extending warrantless FISA surveillance.
Former President Trump has talked about the possibility of turning aid for Ukraine into a loan. Is that what you're considering?
Yes. I had a great visit with him at Mar-a-Lago on Friday, and he and I are 100% united on these big agenda items. And when you talk about aid to Ukraine, he's introduced the loan lease concept, which is a really important one that I think has a lot of consensus, as well as these other ideas, the Repo Act, which we've discussed, which is seizing the assets of corrupt Russian oligarchs to help pay for this resistance. I think these are ideas that I think can get consensus, and that's what we've been working through. We'll send our package, we'll put something together and send it to the Senate and get these obligations completed. Yeah, the President and I agree on the necessity of the uses of FISA. Remember, that's how we kill terrorists. That's how we stop terrorist plots on U.S. soil. That's why we haven't had another 9/11 since that terrible tragedy. President Trump used it, and he reauthorized it in 2018 for 6 years, and that's why it's up again. What we did was
taking on the deep state by authorizing more money for the Ukraine proxy wars. Mike Johnson saying here he will do, and also renewing warrantless FISA surveillance.
Empowering the deep state to spy on people, including
Now,
U.S. citizens.
Before Mike Johnson became speaker, he actually voted against both these things. He voted against Ukraine war funding. He voted against FISA extension. But that's what happens in Washington. Once you get to a position of power,
right,
you face a lot of pressure to cave to the pro-war establishment. And that's what he's doing. And it looks like Donald Trump is doing it with them because contrary to popular belief that Trump has been the one holding up Ukraine aid, Mike Johnson's saying here that actually Trump is down. He just wants it in the form of a loan.
Right. Because he's a good businessman.
Yeah. And he wants it mostly military, not humanitarian.
Right.
But that is our political spectrum. The Republicans who want full support for Israel and Democrats who also want full support for Israel and for Ukraine, and Republicans saying, let's also give them to Ukraine, but just in the form of a loan so they can pay us back one day.
It's so nice to have these political options.
All right. Well, that comes to the end of another edition of Monday Morning.
Yes.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Please like the stream if you haven't already.
And thanks so much for all your super chats.
Yes. And also, remember, go to usefulidiots.podcast.com. That's our website. Support the show, get bonus content, keep the show going. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.